Welcome to Watch Cozy. Before we start this episode, please subscribe to our channel. We work really hard to find documents and put together this podcast for you. All right, let's talk about something really personal today, something that, it touches all of us every single day. I want you to just think about this for a sec. There was this study, Microsoft did it back in 2013, and it dropped a pretty shocking truth bomb about our attention spans. So back in the year 2000, right, the average human could focus for about 12 seconds straight. Fast forward just 13 years to 2013, and that number, it plummeted down to just 8 seconds. And here's the really wild part, kind of humbling actually, a goldfish, a common goldfish, its attention span is 9 seconds. So yeah, for a bit there, we were technically losing to a fish. And it doesn't look like it's getting better. There are projections suggesting that maybe by 2025, our average attention span could dip even lower, like maybe around 5 seconds. So the big question we really want to dig into today is why? Why is it so incredibly hard these days to just focus, even on the stuff that really matters to us, Our biggest goals, our own growth. Why does our brain just seem to want to bounce all over the place?
It's a huge question. You're right. You see the effects everywhere when you start looking. Think about like the endless scroll on TikTok, those super short videos, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or just that constant need, that craving for a quick dopamine hit. It feels like more than just a new habit. It feels like it's actively, chipping away at one of our greatest strengths as humans, the ability to sustain our focus. And what's really fascinating, maybe a little worrying too, is that research from Stanford actually backs this up. They found that people with lower concentration tend to have a weaker analytical part of their brain.
A weaker analytical part. What does that actually mean for us, like in our day-to-day lives?
Well, it's not just about being, less smart or anything like that. It's more about losing some of that ability for deliberate conscious thought. See, when our brains are kind of stuck in that reactive, emotional mode, always chasing the next notification or reacting on impulse, we're just way more likely to make snap judgments or, fall for some marketing gimmick or just get swept up in whatever trend is loudest at the moment.
Instead of thinking things through for ourselves.
Exactly. Instead of thoughtfully charting our own course, it kind of limits our intellectual freedom,
Yeah.
our ability to really think independently and make choices that line up with what we actually value deep down. It's sobering, isn't it? The idea that our freedom of thought could be sort of subtly slipping away.
It really is. So, okay, our mission for this exploration today is pretty clear. We need to uncover these hidden enemies of focus, the ones lurking around us, but also the ones inside us. And crucially, we're not just here to point out the problem. We're going to hunt for practical ways, maybe even some ancient wisdom, to help us get that concentration back. And get ready, because we're going to find some really surprising, deep insights from a pretty unexpected source, a legendary Japanese philosopher and samurai from over 400 years ago, Miyamoto Musashi.
Okay, so let's unpack this first major enemy of focus. When we talk about what's stealing our attention, the number one thing that jumps out for, I think, most of us is just information overload. It's constant. Oh, absolutely relentless.
Yeah.
Emails, notifications, headlines, the social media feeds, those little alerts pinging all the time. It's a barrage.
It really is.
And modern tech, especially with AI exploding everywhere, it just feeds into this massively. We end up consuming more and more information. And honestly, a lot of it is pretty useless or irrelevant, right? And the irony is, it makes us use our actual brains less. Less for critical thinking, less for deep processing, or for, really solving problems.
It's like a weird cycle, quantity over quality.
Exactly. And our brains just get overwhelmed instead of, enlightened. The cognitive load, just trying to sift through all that noise, even subconsciously, it's immense.
Yeah.
It leaves you feeling mentally drained before you even start on the important stuff.
And this is exactly where Miyamoto Musashi, our samurai guide here, kind of steps in. For anyone who doesn't know, Musashi was this legendary figure in Japan, a master swordsman, yes, but also a really profound philosopher. He famously won something like over 60 duels. And the key wasn't just his sword skill, which was incredible, but it was his focus. People described it as just like unparalleled sharpness.
And his whole approach, not just to combat, but to life, to mastering anything, was really rooted in that disciplined concentration.
So what does he tell us?
Well, his wisdom, even though it's centuries old, feels incredibly relevant right now. In his book, Dokodo, which means something like The Way of Walking Alone, he has this insight that just cuts right through our modern struggle. He says, do not retain things you no longer need.
Simple.
Deceptively simple. And if you connect that to today, it's not just about, decluttering your house, though that helps too. It's about intellectual and emotional Minimalism.
So like cleaning out your mental closet.
Exactly. It applies to those endless social media feeds, the mental baggage we all carry, the useless data we absorb, maybe even relationships that aren't helping us grow anymore. Holding on to all this unnecessary stuff just clogs up our thinking.
That's really powerful. It reminds me of that other famous piece of his advice, the one I always found so striking. Instead of practicing 100 moves, practice one move 100 times.
Yes, it's all about that focused repetition, isn't it?
Yeah, cutting out the fluff, mastering the essential.
It is. But that raises the big question, right? How do you actually know what's useless? What information or tasks are actually hurting your focus?
Good point. How do you identify it?
Well, Musashi actually offers a surprisingly practical method. He suggests you literally write down all the tasks that regularly take up more than, say, 15 minutes of your day. Then, for each one, you ask yourself 3 specific questions. Basically, 1, is this task or information critical for my main goal right now? 2, does doing this directly move me closer to my bigger long-term vision? And 3, could I possibly delegate this or just eliminate it completely without any real negative consequences?
Okay. Like a filter.
Exactly. And if the answer to 2 out of those 3 questions is yes, meaning, it's not critical right now, it doesn't really push you forward, and yeah, you could get rid of it, then that's a really strong sign. It indicates that task or the info tied to it is probably part of that excess that's harming your goals.
And
then he advises you should absolutely discard it. Just let it go.
it sounds like applying surgical precision to your mental space
Yeah.
and your schedule, too. Actively cutting out the dead weight because, like Musashi himself warned, and this is so good, a tired mind is useless like a dull sword.
Powerful image.
You can't win a duel or, achieve your big goals with a dull blade. Your mind needs to be sharp, unburdened. Okay, so moving on from that external clutter, the information overload. Here's where it gets, I think, really interesting and maybe a bit more personal for a lot of us. We also have these internal energy drainers, things like, regrets about the past that just keep popping up, or that habit we have, often unconscious, of constantly comparing ourselves to other people.
Oh, yeah. Those internal drainers are definitely cunning. And they have terrible timing, don't they? They usually show up right when you're about to make a big decision or maybe try to start a new positive habit that needs real effort.
Like your brain is trying to sabotage you.
It's almost like that, like a defense mechanism, maybe. Part of our mind pushing back against anything new, anything unknown, or anything that requires us to, change.
Give me an example.
Okay, say you decide, right, I'm going to start my own business. And boom, suddenly all these doubts, these memories of past failures just flood your mind. Or you start a new workout routine. And instantly your brain pulls up images of like fitness influencers who look perfect without even trying. It just drains your willpower before you even begin.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. So what's Musashi's answer? How do we deal with this internal sabotage, these mental chains holding us back?
His solution is, again, profoundly simple on the surface, but really revolutionary when you grasp it. He says, accept and see everything as it is.
Accept and see everything as it is.
Yeah, and he knew this deeply because he spent a lot of his life as a ronin, basically a masterless samurai. He wandered the country, experienced life raw, unfiltered. He saw countless things just as they were, without illusions or expectations.
So that experience shaped his philosophy.
Absolutely, that kind of unvarnished perspective led him to this deep understanding of acceptance.
Okay, but how does accepting things as they are help with regret or comparison?
Well, think about it. Truly seeing things as they actually are, instead of constantly wishing they were different, is transformative. It's estimated that just doing that can eliminate something like 95% of our regrets and those inner suppressions, those things we hold back.
95%?
Yeah, because so much of our self-censorship, right, that feeling of holding ourselves back, it often comes from our own expectations or what we think others expect of us. When you truly accept reality, the good parts, the bad parts, the imperfections, all of it, you dismantle that huge internal pressure. You stop fighting what is.
And you can use that energy elsewhere.
Exactly. You start using your energy on what can be.
This feels like a real challenge to a lot of that toxic positivity stuff you hear sometimes. It's all your fault, just manifest your dreams kind of message.
It really does. Musashi's golden rule from Dokodo offers something much more grounded, maybe even gentler. He says, have no desires or cravings for anything.
No desires. That sounds passive, like giving up.
It can sound that way at first, but it's not really about being passive or lacking ambition. It's more like Imagine floating with the current of a river. You adapt to the flow, you work with it, instead of rigidly trying to fight upstream or force the river to go where you want.
Ah, okay. Adapting instead of forcing. That's a key difference.
A huge difference. And the question then becomes, how does that no desires thing actually work in our lives when we all have goals?
Yeah.
Think about water again. Water takes the shape of whatever container it's in, right? It flows around obstacles. But that same soft, adaptable water over time can polish the hardest stones. It can carve canyons.
Right. Gentle but powerful.
Exactly. So it's about adapting your own desires and expectations based on reality, based on the conditions you're actually facing, rather than rigidly forcing some pre-planned outcome and then beating yourself up when life inevitably throws you a curveball.
Because forcing it leads to.
Well, excessive emotions, rigid expectations, Musashi warned about that too. He actually said, defeat occurs when emotion overcomes strategy.
Ah, when you let frustration or panic take over.
Precisely. When your emotions hijack your thinking, even the best plans can just fall apart.
Yeah.
And that connects perfectly to the third enemy of focus we need to talk about.
Yeah.
Just a basic lack of strategy and planning. What's really key here is that having a strong strategy, a good system for planning, can actually keep you focused, even when you're just not feeling it. You know, those days when motivation is zero.
Oh, yeah. We all have those days. Motivation can be so unreliable sometimes, can't it? A fleeting friend.
Totally. So how do we build that structure, that roadmap that can guide us even when we're feeling lost in the fog?
Yeah, what's the practical step?
Well, the first method Musashi points to is something we can call the top-down view. Getting a comprehensive understanding of the bigger picture. This is super helpful if your work gets messy easily or if you feel like you're always just putting out fires.
Okay, the top-down view. Tell me more.
It addresses that really common problem of getting lost in the maze of daily tasks, right?
Tunnel vision.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You focus so hard on one urgent thing, maybe answering emails, and meanwhile, this other really important project just stalls completely. It creates this huge imbalance.
And you end up pouring energy into stuff that doesn't really move the needle long term.
Precisely. As Musashi put it so well, even a slight deviation from the right path becomes a major branch in the future.
Wow, yeah. That small distraction today can lead you way off course later on, losing sight of the forest for the trees, basically. Okay, so how do we apply this top-down view practically? What's the action?
Right, here's a simple method you can try. First, just take a minute, grab some paper, and write down your main daily tasks, everything you feel like you need to do.
Okay, brain dump.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Then look at that list and identify maybe 4 major related tasks that, if you actually completed them, would account for like 80% of your real progress for the day or week. The big levers.
The 80-20 rule, basically.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
Finding those key tasks. So if you're writing a book, maybe it's 4 key chapters. If you're launching something, 4 critical steps.
Got it.
Once you have those 4, look for any time overlaps or dependencies. Like, does task A need to be done before task C?
Right.
Then categorize them. Use that classic Eisenhower matrix, urgent, important, not urgent, important, urgent, not important, not urgent, not important. That really clarifies where your energy should go.
So you know what's actually important versus just noisy.
Exactly. And your priority should always be hitting those main important tasks first. Then maybe look at the ones with critical overlaps. It's about seeing the whole picture, not just the immediate thing screaming for attention.
It makes me think of, like, race car driving.
How so?
Well, if a Formula One driver only stared at the car directly in front, right, totally fixated on that one opponent,
yeah.
but ignored the upcoming turns, their tire wear, fuel levels, speed, or what their team is telling them over the radio about strategy.
They'd crash or run out of gas.
Yeah.
Bad result. Yeah.
Exactly. It's that artful balance, like you said, between the immediate target and the bigger strategic picture.
That's a perfect analogy. And Musashi actually talked about this directly. He used the terms near eye and far eye as being key to concentration, emphasizing holding both perspectives at once.
Near eye and far eye. Okay, how does that apply to our focus day to day?
It's really about cultivating simultaneous awareness. Your near eye is that intense, immediate focus on the task right in front of you. You know, the details, the present moment, the specific action you're taking.
Okay, zoomed in.
Right. And your far eye is maintaining awareness of the bigger context. Your ultimate goal, the overall strategy, how this one action fits into the grand plan.
So you don't get lost.
Exactly. It prevents that tunnel vision. It lets you react effectively to what's happening right now while still staying aligned with your long-term direction. It helps you avoid wandering down those major branches that lead you way off course. You move with purpose.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so that leads us to a second method, something really powerful, often talked about in martial arts and philosophy too. Mushin and Noshin.
Ah, yes, a beautiful concept.
It translates roughly to mental silence or inner silence,
You're right,
eh?
no mind or empty mind.
Have you ever had that experience where you're just so deeply into a simple task, maybe it's writing or gardening or cooking, even just washing dishes, that you totally lose track of time?
Flow state.
Yeah, and you just feel this deep satisfaction, almost like you're submerged inside yourself, and the outside world just fades away. That's kind of like mushin, isn't it?
That's exactly the essence of it, a state of profound, deep focus.
Yeah.
And the key is it doesn't have to be formal meditation sitting on a cushion.
Right.
It's about bringing that quality of focus to simple, everyday things, writing, cooking, a long walk, exercise.
Yeah.
And this is crucial, doing it without distractions.
No phone, no music.
Exactly. No podcasts even, just the natural sounds of the task itself, your body moving, your breath, just being fairly present with it. The goal is to quiet that inner narrator, that constant chatter.
So the task itself almost becomes like your breath, effortless and just happening.
Beautifully put, yes. It becomes an extension of you. Effortless and complete. Now, I'll be honest, it's a hard practice to cultivate in our super noisy, distracted world.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But the payoff for your focus, for your mental clarity, even just your sense of calm, it's immense. A good way to start is just focusing on your breath, like in basic meditation, then gradually try to extend that focused awareness to other simple, repetitive activities. Find that flow in the ordinary.
Okay, so we've talked information overload, inner drainers, lack of strategy. What does all this mean when we look at maybe one of the biggest modern distractions? Those really distant, often kind of unrealistic long-term desires and aspirations.
Yeah.
It feels like we're constantly shown images of what we should want, what success should look like, and that just pulls our focus away from where we actually are.
That's a really critical point. And it's fascinating how Musashi's thinking here aligns so closely with even older wisdom, like Buddhist philosophy. The idea that excessive desire is the root of all suffering. In our world today, consumerism, social media, celebrity culture, they're constantly dangling these images of seemingly perfect lives, perfect possessions, perfect achievement in front of us.
Making us feel like we're not enough.
Right. It often creates these false needs, this sense of dissatisfaction with what we actually have right now. Or it fuels this perpetual striving for something that's always just out of reach. We're told we need that car, that vacation, that body type.
And when your mind gets hooked on those desires, fixated on that distant, maybe idealized future, your focus just shifts completely, doesn't it? Instead of concentrating on your actual work, the effort right here, right now, you're off in wishful thinking land.
Exactly. It's a massive drain on your mental energy. Which brings us to Musashi's fifth principle, which directly tackles this. Detach from long-term desires.
Detach from desires again. Okay, how does that work practically?
His point is profound. If your entire focus is on the present work, on the effort right now, on doing that with excellence, mastering the small steps, then high-quality long-term results will naturally emerge from that process.
So focus on the process, not the prize.
Precisely. It's like building a house. You focus on laying each brick perfectly, with care and attention. You don't just stand there dreaming about the finished mansion while ignoring the actual blocks in your hand. When you detach from obsessing over the outcome and fully commit to the process, paradoxically, the outcomes you desire are actually more likely to happen.
It really strikes me that so much of our mental noise, that internal rumination, seems to come from one of two places. Either these super long-term desires or those lingering past regrets.
You've nailed it. Both pull us completely out of the present moment, the only place where we can actually do anything.
So is there a practical tool for dealing with that specific loop, the regret-desire cycle?
There is, actually. And it's a highly practical, surprisingly effective technique that many people find really transformational. It's called the distraction hour.
Distraction hour. Sounds counterintuitive.
It does, doesn't it? But the concept is simple. You dedicate 1 hour each day, maybe the same time every day, just for yourself.
Okay. And what do you do in that hour?
You take a piece of paper and you write down everything. All your past regrets, all your future worries, all your present stresses and anxieties. Just dump it all out.
You don't try to solve them.
Nope. The goal isn't to find solutions during that hour. It's purely about expression, getting it out of your head and onto the paper. I have to admit, when I first heard about this, I thought it sounded kind of weird, like scheduling time to worry.
Yeah.
But the sense of freedom I felt during the rest of the day after doing it, it was genuinely eye-opening.
Okay, that's fascinating. So what are the benefits? Why does that work?
It seems to work on two powerful levels. First, it stops you from suppressing those thoughts. Because when you suppress them, they tend to just bubble up anyway, usually at the worst possible moments, right when you need to focus.
Yeah, like a beach ball held underwater.
Exactly. And second, and this might be even more powerful, it actually trains your brain. It teaches your brain to postpone dealing with those worries until the designated distraction hour.
Like telling your brain, not now, we have an appointment for that later.
Pretty much. Your brain learns, okay, I don't need to spin on this right now. I've got a specific time set aside for it. And that frees up your mental bandwidth, your focus. During all the other hours of the day, you can actually concentrate on your work or be present with your family without those intrusive thoughts constantly pulling you away. It's like brilliant cognitive retraining.
Wow. We've really covered a lot of ground today, haven't we? Really exploring these hidden enemies of focus. We started with that feeling of being drowned by information overload. Then we dug into those sneaky internal energy drainers, regrets, comparisons. We looked at why strategy and planning are so vital, even when motivation dips. And finally, tackling those unrealistic long-term desires that pull us out of the now. And threaded through it all, we had the wisdom of Miyamoto Musashi, that samurai philosopher from centuries ago, offering these incredibly practical, tangible solutions that feel so relevant right now.
It's really fascinating, isn't it? How his core message seems to boil down to this almost radical kind of acceptance, adapting to reality instead of constantly fighting it, and finding that deep focus, not by just gritting your teeth and forcing it, but by strategically clearing out all the internal and external clutter that holds us back.
Sharpening the mental sword.
Exactly. It's about refining your own mental battlefield so you can face whatever comes your way with clarity, with intention.
So, as you go about your day after listening to this, I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on. A provocative question, maybe. What if real deep focus isn't actually about doing more or trying harder to just push distractions away? What if it's really about letting go of what no longer serves you and truly fully embracing the present moment? My challenge to you is this. Pick just one of Musashi's methods we talked about today. Just one. Maybe it's asking those 3 questions to cut useless info. Maybe it's practicing acceptance. Maybe implementing that top-down view or trying Mushin in a simple task or even scheduling that distraction hour. Fen, just try implementing one thing in your daily life. See what happens when you start, consciously, to sharpen your own mental sword.